What's going on, Wolves and Wolfettes? Back at you again with another episode of Market Watch Mondays. It was a good weekend. Took some time. Went to wine country. Did some wine tasting. Pretty awesome. Another 4-hour drive road trip back. So that was a bit of a grind. But other than that, we're back at the satellite offices in California. We're at the den. We're helping you, trying to get a W as we're approaching the fantasy football playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
A lot going on. I actually haven't had a chance to catch up on all the games yet because, like I said, I was on the road for 4 hours, but just got back. So, right now I got the Seahawks and Giants game. Seahawks are losing because Pete Carroll stinks. Probably one of the most overrated head coaches in the game. But yeah, I haven't caught up on all the games yet, but I have, learned and dug in on a couple of them. So I'll cover a couple things I want to cover there. And then again, we're just going to go back to some strategy and some topics that I wanted to go over this weekend. More so, I guess this time, not so much strategies, like more framed around like the way to think about things when you approach value, but we'll get to that later. But look, I mean, someone asked me last week to stop the James Robinson victory laps, and to them I said this. I said no, because I apologize. I can't do it. It's not victory laps. It's celebrations, man. It's celebrations because you just love watching someone with his backstory, an undrafted free agent coming out of nowhere and just taking the NFL by storm. And he put up another top 5 running back week. He had a lot of targets, carries, touchdowns. He had it all, man. He had it all again as an underdog going in. Like, this guy has not had a positive game script forever, at least heading in, and he's just continued to produce. You just love to see that. I mean, people were still talking about whether they should be acquiring James Robinson and all that stuff. I think I've covered that at length. You know where I'm at on that. If you can cash out for a top 4 pick in superflex formats, so to lock in like a Najee, Etienne, T-Law, Fields, absolutely do it. If you're a contender, though, you're just gonna ride him, man. I know he's got tough schedule coming up, but it doesn't matter when you're getting this type of volume. When you're that good, you just ride him to the bank. You ride him to the bank. You ride him to the bank every single time. And like, the reason why I talk about James Robinson so much, I don't talk about Antonio the God Gibson anymore, because I feel like Gibson has gotten the respect he deserves. Right? We were high on Gibson. We were high on Gibson before we were even high on James Robinson. Like, we thought Gibson was going to be a god, and a lot of people hate on him because he had 33 carries, limited sample, yada yada yada. Whatever excuses you want to invent to kind of like cover that. I mean, I saw like some like pretty silly thread from like Nick Whalen talking about that too, about like basically just cherry picking stats about why he's not good. I mean, at this point, if you're still not in on Antonio Gibson, like, we've already given up on you because you clearly just are not watching the same things that we're doing. Like, I tweeted something out on the weekend, and I think it's my approach to Dynasty and approach to rankings, approach to valuations as well. It's like, try and see like I think it's a hockey quote, right? Like, try and go for where the puck is heading, not for where the puck is now. So like, it's kind of like I kind of take that approach to Dynasty as well, where like, I really don't think you should be valuing Antonio Gibson based on what he gets today. What he gets today is a really raw prospect. Has had a couple of boom games and shown flashes and shown his athleticism and playmaking ability, right? That's what he is today. He's incredibly raw. He's still, in my opinion, like, leaving a lot of yards on the field. He's not perfect in it by any means, but if he's doing what he's doing today at that level, just think about what he can be a year from now once he's more developed, once he's actually learned the game. He's only been playing running back for like not that long, right? He's still learning the position. What he's doing right now, what you're seeing him do, is based off of pure raw athleticism and talent, and that is tough to do in the NFL because a lot of guys are super athletic. They come in and they're beasts, and they put up like incredible numbers at the Underworld Olympics, and everyone, are drooling and foaming at the mouth for them. But then when they get in the league, like, there's nothing, because like every single guy in the league is freaking athletic, right? We make fun of guys like David Montgomery all the time, right? But David Montgomery is still an elite athlete compared to like the normal folk, like all these fat dudes sitting on the couch critiquing NFL players, right? And Antonio Gibson makes elite guys look average. That is the athletic and raw talent that he has, and I think his ceiling is really, really like unmatched by most guys in the league. I think he's got one of the highest ceilings ever. I mean, I'm not gonna say he's CMC, because CMC is probably one of the once in a lifetime, like, unicorn, once in a decade, like, unicorn fantasy asset. But if Antonio Gibson becomes like 80% of what like CMC is, like 85% of what CMC is on his top end, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised if he becomes some version of the David Johnson of old for that one unicorn season that we have him, right? I'm not saying he will, but I'm saying that is the upside that he has. And that's like how you got to capture that in your value, right? You can't just like rank him as like a like a middling like RB2 because like that's where he is now, and he's had a couple like RB1 upsides, or rank him as like an RB12 because you think like, oh, maybe that's like where he is. You got to capture that upside somehow. In fantasy, you gotta chase the upside. I think it's super important. You gotta chase the upside. That's why we loved Antonio Gibson. But that's why I didn't talk about him as much, right? I don't talk about him as much because I feel like I'm starting to see people rank him that way. I'm starting to see people rank him in like their top 5, top 8, top 10 dynasty running backs. And I feel like he's getting the respect he deserves, right? He's getting the respect he deserves. And the only difference is he was drafted at the top of the 3rd round with a 2nd overall pick. So almost like a late second. And James Robinson was undrafted. Like that is literally the only thing that people have to like grasp onto, that people still don't believe in James Robinson. They're going to draft Najee Harris. They're going to draft blah, blah, blah. The reason why I have to talk about him episode is I feel like there's so much misinformation out there from draft capital drones that it's like it's flooding the market, and I just don't feel like he's getting the respect he deserves. And you can still acquire James Robinson for a single first, and that can still be a good deal for both sides. But I would rather have James Robinson because if he does continue to do what he does, even if they cut his volume, right? Because he has operating at a pretty unsustainable volume in terms of his workhorse role. He is a bona fide bell cow now. Like he is top of the league in terms of his volume. He is at like the Dalvin Cook, Ezekiel Elliott type of volume right now. And obviously there's risk that goes down. But even if it cuts it down, I still think he's going to be a pretty valuable asset. I still think he can return running back 1 value in Dynasty. And I honestly do not believe that they're going to replace him in the draft because they have way too many freaking holes. They're going to draft Justin Fields. They got to protect Justin Fields because, I mean, as good as James Robinson has been, like their O-line is nothing top tier about that O-line, right? And they're going to have to get a ton of stuff on defense. Their defense freaking stinks, okay? Their pass defense or rush defense, everything's bad. They have way too many holes to focus on anything other than James Robinson. So that's why I'm saying, like, take that risk, man. When I invest in James Robinson, like, people think that like I'm not recognizing the risk or something. That's not it at all. I completely recognize the risk, but it is a risk reward balance that you should be throwing the dice on every time. Because if he hits, the magnitude of his impact is much multitudes higher than if you miss with him. If you miss with him, whatever. We spent like a 1st round pick. You bust on a 1st round pick. You bust on a higher end wide receiver maybe that you paid for him. Who cares, man? It's not going to destroy your league. That's not going to destroy your dynasty. But if you hit on him, it will absolutely change the dynamics of your league to have a top running back like that, because that is how you win. As much as zero RB truthers want you to believe otherwise, that is how you win. So James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, I already have them in my top. I think like Antonio Gibson is like my top 8. I think James Robinson is a little bit lower than him because I was actually ranking my running backs, and it seemed like it's a little bit deeper than you think when you actually go through all the names, and then you got more talent coming in 2021. But dude, these guys are here to stay, man. Just ride the wave, enjoy it. If you're coming at me with sit questions about James Robinson in the playoffs, don't bother, because my advice to you is going to be to start him because he's a stud. He's getting stud volume. He's getting bell cow volume. Even in tough matchups, he's getting goal line work. He's getting everything. So volume is there to stay. The floor that he provides you. Speaking about floors, like James Robinson is someone that actually provides you like an RB2 floor, like every single week. That's basically what he is. That's basically what he's been all season. So, which brings me to another topic I want to cover: Devante Booker. And I tweeted it. I try to warn people. Like, I saw a lot of like, hey, Devante Booker, and from like big names too, like big name analysts, like going out there and saying Devante Booker, RB2 floor, like RB1 upside. He's an RB1 lock. Everyone put him in your lineups. You got to lock him in. Look at what DeAndre Washington did. And I just tweeted, I said, look, people forget backups are backups for a goddamn reason, right? Alexander Madison, RB1 lock season. You all remember that? Went up there, put up 5 points against Atlanta after got blown out. Today, what did Devante Booker do? Puts up 6.1 PPR points. That's what I said. I said, hey, look, start Devante Booker if you need to, because it's starting running back, and those are rare. He's going to get some volume, but don't be freaking surprised and come back crying when he puts up 5 to 8 points for you. And that's exactly what he does, because that's what he is. He's a freaking backup running back. He's a career backup running back that burned and washed out in Denver with very minimal competition. And people are expecting this guy to just come out and put up like 20 PPR points for you. Like, it's just, it blows my mind. Like, the running backs don't matter movement, I think, is incredibly stupid. Even though I'm from like an analytically minded thing, it's like I think people misunderstand it as well. It's like it's not running backs don't matter, it's just that they matter less than all the other positions, right? It's like they cannot have as big of an impact on the game as a quarterback, as a pass rusher, as a cornerback. That's why you shouldn't invest the draft capital in them, because they're easily replaceable, easily hurt, they're cheap. So, but you'd be a fool to not recognize that having Josh Jacobs on the field is difference maker than having Devante Booker. You'd be a fool to think that Alexander Madison is as good as Dalvin Cook. And I've seen it. People have said this. And yes, I'm saying those people are fools. So fade that advice. And if you followed me, hopefully you yielded my advice because man, when I tweeted that tweet, it got a lot of like frustrated anger. People were like, "Oh, I mean, I've been watching Devante Booker, and he's been just as good as Jacobs this year. Like, oh, he's actually talented." And Alexander Madison, like, I'm like, dude, what the heck are you guys talking about? Devante Booker's a backup. Put him in your starting lineup. I started him too because it's hard to come up with running backs at this point in the season. But when I started him, I'm in my mind, I'm fully prepared to accept the result where he puts up a dud and gets me like 5 to 8 points. That's exactly what he did. And in some leagues, my team was good enough to overcome it, and in other leagues, I wasn't. Right, but like the whole notion of like, hey, he's RB2 floor, it just like was comical to me. That's why I have to bring it up. Hopefully, you guys saw the tweet. Hopefully, you followed that advice because if you got too cute with it, I started seeing people like, hey, should I start him over Jonathan Taylor? Should I start him over, more like established like vets, like even like Kareem Hunt and all these guys? And I was just like, dude, no, okay, just don't get cute with it. If you're desperate for a running back, play him in that flex. Like play him as your RB3, right? But don't play him as if he's gonna be your RB1, RB2. It's just not gonna happen, and that's just like not a real thing. So sucks that it happened that way for all those folks out there. But man, the lineup of you guys that should be in those comments, like taking that fat L in my comments, all the guys who commented talking about how he's gonna be really good. It should be longer than your DMV line because I had a lot of people in there telling me he was talented and how he's gonna do good. So just fade that advice, man. Just remember this: backups are backups for a reason. All right, for most of the time. Sometimes it's a good backup. You get like a guy like a Tony Pollard, right? Like Aaron Jones that climbs up the depth charts. But for the most part, if it's like your fourth or fifth year in the league and you haven't done jack shit yet, chances are you're probably not that good at running back. So that's the case with Devante Booker. All right. So those are the kind of the players I want to talk about. I mean, not too much to talk about other than that right now. Like, I mean, I know Devontae Adams continues to father defensive backs in the league. Got more children in the NFL than Philip Rivers has kids outside the NFL. I mean, he is incredible. Darius Slay, I don't know if Darius Slay's ever stopped Devontae Adams. I mean, they used to play in the same division when Slay was with the Lions, but Devontae Adams, man, he's a beast. I traded from a couple leagues and contenders that I'm trying to contend in, and I really hope he pulls it through for me in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, he's a beast. And Darren Waller, tight end premium league, got 1.5 tight end premium league, put up like 55 points for me, man. Like, and if you think back to the days, like I think when I first tweeted about Darren Waller, like a while back, I just said like, look, this guy's an incredible value at tight end 8 in the like 6 to 8, like 7 to 8th rounds. And everyone's like, oh, I'm gonna take my chance like late round tight ends. Everyone's like, oh, like too much competition with Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards. Y'all really faded a top 3 tight end because of 2 rookie wide receivers. Just think about that, man. Think about that. I said it then. I said Darren Waller's gonna lead this team in targets, receiving yards, and everything on the receiving end because he is a fucking beast. Okay, he's an incredible player. He's a top 3 tight end in the league. He's almost in that same tier with Kittle and Kelsey for me. I mean, he is an incredible athlete. Uh, he's just a stud, man. If you have him, ride him. Just ride him out. He's only 27. I think he's gonna honestly, I think he's gonna get extended because tight ends do have a longer shelf life, and he is the core of that offense. He is the reason why that offense goes, and you just got to ride with him. I have a league with Travis Kelsey and Darren Waller. Now that George Kittle's gone, like it's a start 2 tight end premium league. That advantage is probably the biggest advantage you have in fantasy football. If you guys have that stack, man, just freaking ride at the championship. It's gonna be a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. All right, now what I want to talk about for this specific episode. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about how to anchor like value and risk. Cause I had some conversation on Twitter with some people and that's what kind of sparked this like thought in this process for me. But you know, someone said, I said that James Robinson is still a risky investment because of the draft capital side, but he is worth the risk. And someone said, no, he's not risky because you probably got him for free. You probably got him for 3rd round pick, which kind of brought me back to the thing like, that's not the way that you should think about risk. Like the way you should think about risk is mark to market. And what I mean by that is in Dynasty, just like the stock market, every week, almost every week, at least every week when the game is played, but even news throughout the week, player values are changing, right? Player values are always changing new information, especially rookies and like younger players, because there's less data set, right? If you think about it this way, a rookie has like 16 in their first season has like 16 data points versus a veteran, maybe it's a 3rd or 5th year in the league, they have like 16 times 5, right? So they have 5 times the data points. So every data point, every game that rookie plays is a much bigger proportion of their full data set and a much bigger proportion of the information set for that player compared to a veteran, someone like Devontae Adams, for example. If Devontae Adams has a dud game, it's kind of like, we've already seen him be a stud. So that's probably an outlier. But if a rookie has like one dud game and And one good game, it's like, dude, that's the 50% of the sample size, right? So I don't really subscribe to the notion that you don't really change your ranks until like 10 weeks or whatever it is. I think if anything, people underreact. And I covered this earlier in one of the other week's episodes, like probably like first 4 or 5 weeks of Market Watch Mondays. But I think people generally underreact. People talk a lot about overreactions and knee-jerk reactions and being too quick to the trigger. But I think for the most part, people like to be stuck in their own ways and stuck in their rankings and try and find ways to justify why they should stay still and stay static versus changing and reacting to new information, especially when it comes to rookies. Why do I have rookies ranked so much higher than consensus in my dynasty rankings? Because it's a big proportion of their sample size. So when people say it's small sample size, like, yeah, sure, it's small sample size, but it's a sample size for their entire career, because that's all you have to go off of, that plus college. So when I see someone who I thought was really good in college based on the college sample size, and they come in the NFL and they continue that trend and produce well, I'm willing to pivot like really quick and move them up my values, especially when it comes to wide receivers like Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, like T. Higgins. These guys are all in my top 10, all in my, like, I think Justin Jefferson's in my top 5 right now. CeeDee Lamb's like not two spots behind him. Like, I think 3 of them are in my top 10. 3 of the rookie wide receivers in my top 10. And most people will be like, well, that's crazy. But to me, it's not crazy, because that is really how they should be valued, right? So I think you got to react to that information. Right. But to go back to the earlier point that I was trying to make, which is how to think about risk and mark to market values, like, player values are changing all the time. Like, I'm constantly updating my rankings for like new information. That's just how I am, because I think players should be mark to market, and every day their value will change based on what they've done in the last week, based on what they've done in the last couple of weeks, based on what they've done, based on news throughout like the week, whether it's injuries or player additions, free agents, whatever. Like, this is all information that you should be taking in and adjusting your rankings like appropriately, right? So that's why you shouldn't think about it like, if you think about it this way, right? What is like sunk cost fallacy? I think that's one thing that people like really struggle with, and why people anchor to their prior beliefs, because they want to try and justify the value that they paid. Like, sunk cost fallacy is why people don't get out when they should, right? It's the opposite of buying high and like reacting to positive news. It's the exact opposite of that. It's, hey, like, people that hung on to JJ Arcega Whiteside because it's like, oh, all I can get is a third, or all I can get is like a fourth or whatever. It's like, yeah, but so what? That's better than nothing, right? That's, if a player is really going down that trajectory, it's better to get out than to stay in my opinion, right? You got to react fast on both sides of the ball. So sunk cost fallacy is where like people are like attached and anchored to a prior cost they paid. And it's like, oh, well, I paid a second round pick for him, so I don't want to sell him for less than that. That's stupid, because people make mistakes. Know when to cut your losses, right? You need to be able to cut your losses and move on to the next stage. And that's, I think, something that people struggle with a lot. But the flip side of that is, you shouldn't sell someone for like cheap and view them as less risky just because you paid very little for them, right? And that's the concept I want to get across. It's like, hey, the guy I was talking about on Twitter, he said like, well, hey, James Robinson only cost me a 5th round rookie pick, or I got him off waivers for free. So like, if I'm measuring the risk to that, like, it's not that much risk at all, because it didn't cost me anything, right? But that's not how you should think about it. How you should think about it is, what is his mark to market value today, right? Today, you could get James Robinson, you could flip him for a maybe a top 5 first round pick easily, right? Easily, you could do that. And if you can do that, that's the risk that you're taking by holding him. The risk you're taking by holding a guy like James Robinson, which I'm happy to do as a contender, is versus a top 5 pick, is that top 5 pick is guaranteed to go up in value. You will be guaranteed to get more value for that first round pick, in April of 2021 than you will today. That is just a matter of fact. That's why I love rookie picks. They are the most guaranteed assets, right? So your risk is really like, hey, it's not really what you paid before, like a month ago or 3 months ago, when you got him for free off waivers, or when you got him with late round dart pick. The risk is his value tanks, and you miss out on the value of capturing that one top 5 rookie first. That is how you should think about risk. Don't anchor, similar to sunk cost fallacy, like, don't anchor to what you paid before when you overpaid, when trying to get out from under a shitty asset. The same applies to other good assets that have risen up in price, right? Your risk is not the 3rd round pick. Your risk is not the free fab money that you just spent on him to acquire him. Your risk is what you can sell him for today. If you didn't believe him, if you wanted to get out from under a James Robinson, if you want to get out from under Antonio Gibson, right, you could probably get 2 firsts easily. That is the risk you take on holding him. And that is the risk that you need to understand, is don't under quantify the risk based on something you paid like months ago. Like I said, the market is constantly changing. That's why we're watching the market every single Monday. Honestly, we're watching every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, especially Sunday. we're watching the market on this channel for you so that you know what's going on with those values. And that's what I want you to understand. The big takeaway here is do not quantify risk by what you paid, quantify risk by what you can get today if you traded them. That is the underlying concept of trading and Dynasty that I always follow. Like, when people get attached to like what they drafted someone for, the one of the most common mistakes I see people make is like, hey, well, I don't want to pay up for that guy after like 4 weeks because he drafted him in the 10th round, and the guy that I'm giving up, I drafted in the 4th round. Who gives a shit? No, it doesn't matter what you drafted someone for once the season starts. For example, like I'm sure people held on to their priors and didn't want to pay up for Justin Herbert. It's like, oh well, he drafted in the 8th round, and I don't want to give up a Carson Wentz who I drafted in the 3rd, 4th round. Look at that. Look at where those people are now, right? You got to be able to react. Do not underreact. Underreacting is just as bad as knee-jerk reacting, if not worse. If not worse, because you're missing out on the upside when you underreact, and that is more dangerous sometimes than buying high and missing on a guy. And I've said it before, like it's much better to kind of pay up and become a part of a party and take the rest of the ride up than to just miss out on the ride altogether. That's not a place where you want to be. Don't be the guy that faded Amazon, because it had some gains early on in the year and just missed out on the rest of the ride. It's okay that someone else makes gains. It's okay that someone else profits too, right? Like people are so obsessed with like winning trades and like not letting other people profit too much that like they don't focus on what's important. What's important is making your team better. It does not matter if you lose a trade if your team comes out better on top. It does not matter if you come out with a better shot to win the championship title, because that's what it's all about, right? People are too focused on winning trades, man. The winning trades in the moment is the most overrated part of Dynasty that I can think of. I couldn't care less about winning trades in the moment. I will gladly overpay or buy high for players that I really, really believe in, because I think that 2 years down the road, that trade's going to look like a money deal for me, right? And I'll gladly overpay right now today to let someone else profit to enjoy the rest of the ride up. And that is what you guys should always be willing to do. Do not be a stickler. Do not be a low baller. Like, do not be that guy that's like, oh well, I miss the buy low window. Buy low. Sometimes guys are buy low because they fucking stink. Like that's just a reality. The Leonard Fournettes of the world. A lot of people are like, we need to buy low on these guys. And dude, sometimes buy low just means the player stinks and you probably shouldn't buy him at all. Same thing. Sometimes buy high means that the player is really good and they're probably worth what you're trying to pay, right? Don't be afraid to be that guy that goes to a W, that overpays, that makes their team better, because that is the end goal. The end goal, there's no belts out there for winning trades. Like I've at least I have not played in one. If you are in one, please let me know. I'd love to see it. But there are no leagues that I've seen out there that says, hey, so and so won 10 trades this year. They're the league champion. I have not seen anyone put on a belt or a crown or hoist a trophy for winning trades. You win by winning the championship. That's what it's all about. And how do you do that? You make your team better. And sometimes that means winning trades, but sometimes that means losing on a trade to make your team better. And that is A-OK with me. All right. So again, just want to quickly go over things. James Robinson, Antonio Gibson, they're gods. They should be up there in your dynasty rankings. They should always be up there, rookie wide receivers. Don't be afraid to kind of make moves and buy high there. But when you're measuring risk, always measure risk based on the mark-to-market value today, not yesterday, not 2 months ago, not 3 months ago. Do not fall for the sunk cost fallacy. Do not fall for the anchoring value fallacy of like trying to think back. Always think about, if you were to trade that player today, what could you get? That is the risk and exposure you are open to by holding a player and not trading them. All right. That is how you should think about it. Do not break from that ever. Okay. And always make sure you're traded to make your teams better, because that's what's important at the end of the day. That is what gets you the W. And in this channel, that's what we're all about. We're all about getting the W. If you enjoyed, please, please, please hit the thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button to the Bunkbed Breakdowns channel. Follow me on Twitter. Engage, chat with me. If you got questions, DM me. I try and answer all the DMs. It might take me a little bit longer because honestly, there's just like a ton of them and it's hard to keep up sometimes. I actually have a real day job out of this that I do real work for. So I'm not always going to be able to respond immediately like back in the day, but I do really try to answer all the questions in every DM that is sent to me. Unless you're a prick, then I just mute you because I don't have time for that shit. But if you want questions answered, just DM me, shout out, or just post in the comments. I honestly try and reply to as many of them as I can. I sometimes miss them, but I try my best. And the one last thing I want to say is you guys are not going to want to miss next week's episode. Next week's episode, Mark it in your calendars today. It's going to be like a precursor to Christmas. It's going to be the first guest ever on Market Watch Mondays. I'm not going to say who it is, but it's going to be a great one because, me and Noah have not had guests on this channel the entire time because we wanted to kind of form our identity and build our brand the way we want to see it, right? And like I just didn't want to flood the channel with a bunch of like guests and promos and all that stuff. But I feel like, we've kind of found our place. I found my place in strategy, in rookie talk, Debbie talk, dynasty talk, more so just like frame of mind thinking and theoretical and hypothetical like strategy when it comes to dynasty on Mark Watch Mondays channel. I feel like that identity has been established. I feel like we have a great community here, great following, the Wolf Pack, tuning into the den every single week. I appreciate you guys on Twitter promoting it and just in the comments, even the negative comments. I love everything. I've got anything to say, it's great. But I feel like now I'm at a stage where I'm comfortable to bring someone on to talk, and it's gonna be a great one. So I don't want to drop who it is yet. Just follow me on Twitter. Maybe I'll release some news in the week. Maybe I won't. Maybe you just see them and they'll be there on your screen. Who the hell knows? But mark it down on your calendars next week on Monday. It's going to be great. It's gonna be great. That's all I can say. All right. That's all I got for you. Boys out. Again, subscribe, follow, do your thing. It's all